With us now, Senator Steve Daines of Montana, member of the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, I would say that poll is a reason why foreign policy shouldn't be decided by polls.
Well, that's for sure. I mean, you go back to the days of Ronald Reagan, his peace through strength doctrine that paid huge dividends for America as we saw the collapse of the Soviet Union after he left the presidency. But I'll tell you, we had lunch with J.D. Vance today on Capitol Hill. The vice president, our former colleague in the Senate, came and had lunch with us Republican senators. And I'll just tell you, widespread support for what's going on right now in terms of supporting Israel. Well, he gave us an update. I mean, he's spending a lot of time in the Situation Room, literally, because of what's going on. But the message was, we stand firmly with Israel to make sure that they do all they need to do to prevent basically a nuclear war. You know, keep in mind, as you well know, this is a unique moment in history. I remember the first time I met with Bibi Netanyahu in Jerusalem 12 years ago. We were talking about the threat Iran posed from a nuclear viewpoint, but Israel always had to be a bit hesitant on destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities because prior to the last year, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis would be attacking Israel if Israel ever preempted with an attack against Iran, and Israel then would be facing basically a four-front war. But with what's happened since October 7th, that horrible terrorist attack by Hamas, a terror proxy, certainly of Iran, they've been able to basically neutralize Hamas. They've been able to neutralize Hezbollah, and the Houthis are on their heels right now. And that gives a unique window now for Israel to take this preemptive attack and to destroy the nuclear capabilities. Let's not forget, this is a regime that targeted President Trump's assassination, that's killed over 200 service members, U.S. service members.
You've got no argument for me about how evil Iran is, and I think the first time I met with Bibi Netanyahu was about 15 years ago, and he was talking about Iran back then. So he's been at it for a while. Look, a lot of foreign policy hawks, and I think a lot of Iran hawks, have been really reassured by President Trump's words. The unconditional surrender, you know, the lines about Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. This is so simple, on and on. It reminds me, though, a little bit of how Sherman-esque President Trump was on Liberation Day about tariffs and in the days following. These tariffs are going to be on for years. We're remaking the American economy, on and on and on. And then pretty quickly he changed course. There were a lot of deals that did not go nearly as far as what he said. Do you worry at all that he's saying these extraordinarily strong things and then will similarly be willing to make a deal with Iran for less?
You know, I'm not. President Trump's resolve has been very clear. I've heard it from him publicly. I've heard it from him behind closed doors. Look, this is a different category than a trade deal. This is an existential threat to the world. Absolutely. This is an existential threat to Israel and, frankly, to the Western world. Now, let's keep in mind
I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more that it's totally different. Why do you think President Trump is going to look at this deal differently than other deals that he's made with foreign leaders and that he's tried to get done?
Yeah, I think this is very unique. The resolve is clear. Iran presents an existential threat, not only to Israel, but also to the Western world, including the United States. This is a regime that talks about death to America, but also, as we know, they call Israel the little Satan and the United States the big Satan. This is a very different type of decision matrix for the president. And when you look at wartime, anytime you enter into a conflict like the Israelis have, there's two very important parts of a military strategy to be successful. One is the element of surprise. There was definitely a surprise there. Number two is the use of overwhelming force. If you're not using overwhelming force in a military engagement, it's immoral to not. You should not be in the engagement. Yep. So you're seeing Israel now with overwhelming amounts of force. They know they got the United States standing side by side with Israel in this very important moment because once this regime topples, once they've destroyed Iran's nuclear capabilities, this is a reset for the Middle East and a reset for the world.
Look, and we have to give Benjamin Netanyahu his due. He destroyed Hamas, destroyed Hezbollah, neutralized the Houthis, and Assad and the Iranian influence in Syria by defying President Biden at every turn and defying sort of the world and the think tank group in doing what he wanted. But that's Netanyahu's legacy. Did you, in talking to Vice President Vance and then knowing President Trump as well as you do, does he understand that this is his legacy when it comes to foreign policy as well?
Well, I think still early in President Trump's administration. He's just 6 months into the job. I think you're going to see a president in President Trump's tenure to have a lot of legacies left behind, because just like Ronald Reagan did, when you start off with peace through strength, when the world now respects the United States, under Joe Biden, nobody feared Joe Biden. This was a very weak commander-in-chief. A strong commander-in-chief literally will redefine the world order. That's exactly what's happening. Okay. And a strong America fills a vacuum that was actually left by Joe Biden. When you look what the Russians and the Chinese, as they see what President Trump is doing, they're on notice. And so this will be one, I think, of many legacies that President Trump will leave behind. But you think about it for a moment, one of the greatest gifts we can give our children and our grandchildren would be to stop or destroy the nuclear capabilities of Iran. He does that in the first 7 or 8 months of his presidency. An amazing legacy for both President Trump and for Benjamin Netanyahu.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.